the news.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your host Jesse Morgan, and welcome to another episode of What in the Paranormal? And this week on What in the Paranormal, we're talking a hidden dinosaur that may still be alive, the first possible interaction with the Men in Black, and with all these people looking for Bigfoot, why haven't we found it yet? The Men in Black. We've heard stories about the Men in Black for... Really, we're closing in on, a century here of stories about them. Not quite, but we're getting there. Definitely over 50 years worth of stories about the Men in Black. And so I did a little bit of research because I wanted to find out, well, when did this start? And it actually is pretty innocuous. It's kind of cool, actually, that it may have simply started with a man, a boy, and a dog on his boat. So this starts with a gentleman by the name of Harold Dahl. He was on a conservation mission in the Puget Sound. This is near the eastern shore of Washington's Mary Island. According to the story, he saw these 6 donut-shaped objects hovering about a half-mile above his boat. During that time, one of them dropped down at an incredibly rapid pace, about 1,500 feet. Supposedly metallic debris started raining down. He supposedly took some photographs that he did share with one of his co-workers. As the story goes, the next morning he was visited by men in black, or this was at the time a man in a black suit. And they go to, of course, to a local place to eat. The man in the black suit, was able to recount the detail of what this gentleman, Mr. Dahl, had experienced. And basically this was actually kind of more of an intimidation tactic than anything else, because he at that point told him, you will not speak of this incident, and if you do, bad things are going to happen. The U.S. government conducted an investigation into this. Dahl and his coworker, his boss actually, admitted it to be a hoax. Did he fear so much from this intimidation tactic from the man in black that he changed his story? He basically came out and said, no, I made that up. The Men in Black, if you're not real familiar, basically they have one objective, one purpose, and that's to keep people quiet that have witnessed strange phenomena, paranormal phenomena, UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call it. And they almost always wear black suits with hats, dark sunglasses, drive black cars, and they're usually not alone. They're usually showing up in 2 or 3 cars, groups of 2 or 3 people. Sometimes people say they have strange features. Not necessarily human, but human-like, glowing eyes, odd complexions, things like that. Mr. Dahl and his boss, Mr. Crimson, actually reached out to a magazine in Chicago in an attempt to sell their story. The magazine ended up contacting Army intelligence to start to investigate this. After leaving to go, they were in B-25 airplanes, B-25 bombers they are typically, to go investigate this, look into it. The plane caught fire and crashed. Both officers were killed, and of course this does nothing but inflame, if you will, UFO conspiracy theorists. And now we'll take a little turn, a little twist, back to one of my favorite topics, Bigfoot. And the question posed here is very simple and straightforward. Why aren't all these people who are going out and looking for Bigfoot finding Bigfoot? There recently was an article with Loren Coleman. He is the owner, proprietor of the International Cryptozoology Museum, and this is in Maine. And Loren's a world-renowned cryptozoologist. And when posed with a question like this, I'm amazed by the simplicity of the answer. By the time you get your cell phone and you turn it on, Bigfoot's gone. You've missed that opportunity. His next thoughts on how to find a Bigfoot, in some ways I align with, other ways I'm not so sure. However, he suggested in an area of the Pacific Northwest, have a group of women go out into the woods and just stay there for 6 months, live in the woods for 6 months. Now, of course, this presents challenges. Lauren Cohn believes there's something in the pheromones in human males that are driving Bigfoot away, and there's been some success with groups of women that have gone out as well. Lauren also predicts that New Guinea and Sumatra may be locations where we'll find unknown animals next. One of the most interesting stories I've heard is someone who would walk the bridle trail. Bridle trails are typically trails that horses go on in parks or land. And this individual, in the mornings before work, would go take a walk on a particular bridle trail or bridle trails at their local park. And all the time they had been doing it, nothing had ever happened out of the norm. So one day, they're out walking this bridle trail and they heard a commotion basically down from them in a little ravine. Then they heard it coming up the ravine and they couldn't see it yet, but it went behind them. So as they turned, they caught a glimpse of something very large and with white grayish hair running across the trail. And stunned at this point, that person stopped, listened, and eventually looked up to what was an overhang above them to their left, I believe. And there was, according to this person, a white grayish haired Bigfoot sitting up there, crouched, staring at them. Back to what Lauren Coleman's talking about, I think taking the time to spend as much as you can in an area that had a bunch of reported sightings of Bigfoot, and going there and settling in, getting comfortable. I would recommend, bringing a video camera, something that has a quick startup time, something you don't have to have on all the time. Keep it with you constantly, and who knows what you might find. And speaking of mysterious things that may still exist, Mokele-Mbembe. This is a purported dinosaur that may still exist in the Congo River Basin. Mokele-Mbembe, people have seen it, and they describe it as it's a four-legged or a quadruped with smooth skin, and then it has what's been described as an unusually long neck with a single tooth or horn on its head. So this is described as a largely aquatic animal. Spends most of its time in the water, and most of the sightings, it's its head and neck which have been visible. But they have found it, or people have claimed to observe it outside of the water, and it's eating plants, fruits, vegetables, things like that. So there's been multiple expeditions looking for this creature. Stephen McCullough, an amateur biologist, wanted to go do this exploration, look for it, even though it was a cover, and said he was going to go look to categorize new plants and animals and things of that nature, but everybody really knew what he was doing. Around in the late 18th century, there was a French missionary who had claimed to have discovered this giant. He said it had clawed footprints, and those footprints measured around 3 feet, which is ridiculously huge. But there was a big game hunter in the early 1900s, Carl Hagenbach, that naturalists had told him about a dinosaur in that region. He kind of described it as a brontosaurus, long-necked dinosaur. Basically, for the next century, there have been all kinds of expeditions to the Congo Basin, but no one, as of to this date, has come up with any evidence or proof of that. But the local tribespeople remain strong in their claims that this is something that exists, or did exist anyways. And with that, folks, I appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to spend another episode here with me, Jesse Morgan, your host, on What in the Paranormal.